Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. Up next on Another View on Health, the latest in treatment for breast cancer. 1 in 8 women in the United States gets breast cancer, but twice as many African American women die from the disease than white women. There are many reasons, but the key to turning this statistic around is early detection. We've got news about 3D mammography and surgical treatments, and men, don't change the station because you can get breast cancer too. And later in the show, we'll talk with filmmaker and television star Tim Reed about his upcoming International Film Festival. Another View is next, right after this news from NPR.
Discussing today's topics from an African American perspective, this is Another View.
And good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to Another View. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. And before we get started with today's show, on behalf of the Another View staff, I must say a huge thank you to everyone who became a member of WHRV-FM last Friday during our show. Now, if you recall, last week we had a $1,000 challenge, and listeners, you came through in such a huge way. We raised $3,500 without the match. So our total during last Friday's Another View was $4,500. Thank you so much, because without your support, we would be unable to bring you the critical health information like today's program on breast cancer. It's October, Breast Cancer Month, and we've invited some very prominent doctors in the fight against breast cancer to join us to talk about prevention, diagnosis, and treatment of this disease. Please welcome Dr. Charles Williams, a breast cancer surgeon with Bon Secours Virginia Health System. Welcome, Dr. Williams.
Good afternoon. Thank you for having me.
Oh, absolutely. We're glad you're here. Dr. John Plemmons, a mammographer with Sentara. How are you, Dr. Plemmons?
I'm doing great, Barbara. Thanks for the invitation.
Thanks for coming. And my co-host, Dr. Keith Newby, and his other job is fixing people's hearts. He's a cardiologist with Fort Norfolk Plaza Cardiology Associates. Hey, Keith.
How are you?
I'm doing great. How you doing?
I'm hanging in there.
Good. So it feels like sometimes that October rolls around, we talk about breast cancer, awareness, and so forth, and then for the next 11 months, it just kind of goes away. But yet there are women every day who are being diagnosed with this disease. So if you had 2 seconds to spend with someone, Dr. Williams, about breast cancer, what would be the most important thing you'd want to tell them right off the bat?
Early detection. Participate in the screening program. Depending on your family history, get your mammograms when you should. Do your self-breast exams. Follow up for clinical breast exams.
So the mammograms are just really, really critical, and we cannot stress that enough. Dr. Plemmons, there is a new mammogram available. It's a 3D mammogram that Sentara is now offering. Can you talk to us a little bit about what the difference is between what people traditionally get as a mammogram and what this 3D is?
Barbara, to the patient, it actually is identical. They'll walk in the same place, they go to the same location, it's the same room, the machine looks identical, compression is the same, the different positioning is identical. The only thing the patient is going to notice different is that the top of the machine will move in an arc over the breast, and during that period of time, it's taking 15 low-dose images to essentially get the breast from different angles, and it's going to use that to create a three-dimensional model of the breast, which the radiologist can then review at the workstation.
So it allows the radiologist to see more in terms of what's going on inside the breast?
What it allows the radiologist to do is actually look at layers of the breast tissue individually. The problem with a 2D mammogram, which is by itself a terrific tool, it is the best tool we have out there, so let's establish that first of all. But the one of the limitations of two-dimensional mammography is that islands of tissue superimpose on each other on a 2D mammogram. In essence, it's almost like looking at a deck of cards, but looking at the whole deck, where three-dimensional mammography allows you to look at each individual card. We liken it to looking at a forest versus looking at the trees individually within the forest.
So you're able then to see if there's a smaller cancerous cell or tumor or anything like that that you may not be able to see in the 2D?
Exactly.
Okay.
What we're able to do is where normal tissue might sit above and below that tumor and hide it on a two-dimensional mammogram, we're able to remove the normal tissue and see exactly the level where that tumor is. It can't hide.
Now, we know, Dr. Plemmons, that one of the issues with women getting mammograms is the cost.
Yeah.
Because if you don't have insurance, there is a cost. There's an additional cost for the 3D.
There is, yeah.
Okay, can you talk about that?
Sure. First of all, let me say that right now the additional fee is $50. This program, three-dimensional mammography, was rolled out or approved by the federal FDA in February of 2011. Mm-hmm. Since that time, it's begun rolling out across the country, but insurance companies don't pay for it. It's a large capital investment from hospitals, a lot of time investment for hospital staff and physicians. That additional fee is there for the time being. I don't think it's going to stay there forever. I think insurance companies are ultimately going to see the value of three-dimensional mammography. The studies have been stunning, really striking at how much better it is than two-dimensional mammography, and I think ultimately they will begin to pay for it, and that extra cost will go away. Mm-hmm. But I think the message I would leave your listeners is, don't let that cost or the cost of for two-dimensional mammography, if they don't have insurance, keep them away. There are so many programs out there, programs from Every Woman's Life to the Komen Foundation, the American Cancer Society, Eastern Virginia Medical School, Sentara and Bon Secours run programs. Just come to us. We will find a way to get you the help you need so you can get your mammogram.
Because it is so important to get it done early. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. What are your questions about breast cancer? Treatment, prevention, and diagnosis. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. Dr. Newby, one of the causes that they say were risk factors is obesity. And you and I always have this conversation on the show about weight. Yeah. You want to talk?
Well, I think like anything else, I'm not sure if it all boils down to just the obesity itself, or is it what goes along associated with types of foods, that we're consuming, and whether that's playing a factor. What I've learned is the older I get, the more cautious I get in certain conclusions, and I always try to, in my mind, looked at what's the underlying premise, like we talk about obesity. Mm-hmm. Was it just the being overweight itself, or is it what's associated with that, like the types of foods you eat, how your lifestyle leads less exercise, all these things that we know if we did a better job, there'd probably be less risk of some of these findings. So I look at it as, I think it all, it's part and parcel, all the same issue. If you can eliminate one thing, typically that means you're taking care of other things as well. So I think it's a conglomerate of several things all rolled up into one.
Dr. Williams, in terms of the surgery, one thing that has happened outside of the month of October was when Angelina Jolie recently talked about discovering that she was carrying a gene that predisposes women to breast cancer, and she decided to have take a preventive step and have mastectomy done without having any symptoms of breast cancer. Do you see more women going in that direction or thinking about that? And what is that a smart thing to do?
Well, definitely with Angelina Jolie taking that step, we've seen a lot more women coming in and inquiring of whether or not that's the right thing to do, inquiring about getting the BRCA 1 and 2 testing. And in her situation, ultimately she made the decision that she thought was best for her, and we try to help women navigate through what would be the best decision for them.
Okay.
I'll tell you what would be a good question to ask to piggyback on that is the people that have that gene.
Yes.
What is the incidence of development of cancer in those patients? I mean, because if it was only 20%, versus if it's 80% or 90%, that would be the.
And that's a really important point, because I think people think, oh, if I have the gene, that means I have cancer, and that's not necessarily true.
Right. So with the BRCA1/2 gene, the women do have a much higher lifetime risk of developing cancer. It's especially in younger women who have it, there's a 9.4% risk of developing breast cancer versus 0.2%. And then
what was the percentage?
9.4.
9.4.
Right. And women less than 35 that are going to have that gene that develop breast cancer.
Well, then isn't that kind of radical to decide then to completely remove both breasts as opposed to waiting to see whether or not you actually develop the disease? Dr. Plemmons.
Well, I think what Dr. Williams has given is the number early on, but your lifetime risk is actually about 80-85%
It is.
for BRCA 1 and 2.
Okay.
And then you bring in the ovarian component and actually the risk of melanoma, some of the other adenocarcinomas. So it's a difficult diagnosis for a patient to accept.
Yeah, actually, Sharon Osbourne, who's the wife of the rocker Ozzy Osbourne, she had colon cancer and then decided to do a double mastectomy later because she found out she had the gene.
Yeah.
So.
I tell you what I would be curious to see is those people that have mastectomies, if they ever actually studied, the actual prevention of cancer in those people that have had it, because I sometimes will see people that may have had they've had mastectomies for breast cancer, and then all of a sudden breast cancer still shows up again because it was either some cells were somewhere, and then they also they start growing or pop back up, because a lot of what we found with cancer is in the genetic predisposition where cells also start. There's a change in cell, production, and all of a sudden the cancer would develop. I haven't looked at that data, but I'd be curious if we know anything about what's the actual cure rate on that. I mean, do they actually prevent it?
Well, Dr. Williams and I were just at a dinner the other night, and I believe the number was 95% rate reduction or risk reduction. But you're right, it's still there. And you don't take every epithelial cell out. It's just impossible. And so the chance of
95% is pretty good.
Exactly. Our phones have lit up. I want to take a couple of calls. Hi, Carl. You're on the air.
Yes, are you there?
Yes, go ahead.
Yes, thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
Wonderful topic.
Thank you.
I'm a therapist, and I have had three men who have had cancer, breast cancer. And my questions are twofold. One is, does the new technique work with them? And, of course, the second is, what do you do? You're talking about those who can remove breasts. Would that be appropriate for that small number of men who have breast cancer? And I'll take my response off the air.
Okay, thank you, Carl, so much. So his first question is, does the 3D work for men? And then secondly, about the surgery. So Dr. Plemmons first.
The technology would certainly work for men. It's really probably not necessary for men. Most men have very essentially fatty tissue unless they have gynecomastia, severe gynecomastia. There's really not much to be gained for three-dimensional mammography. I think standard 2D digital mammography is going to be adequate for men.
So how does a man know? I mean, other than doing a breast exam, how does he know? Should he be getting a mammogram also?
No, not routinely. Although, again, we did talk about the BRCA mutation, the BRCA1 and 2, it's not just on, you get both genes from both mom and dad. And so a male can be a carrier for the BRCA gene, and your risk of breast cancer may be as high as, I think, 20%, I think they said the other night. But self-breast exam is the trick. We're not going to recommend routine annual screening mammography for men.
Gotcha. And then the surgery, he said, for men?
So you ask, how does a man know? Unfortunately, most of the time when men present, it's a later stage because there is no screening program for men. Self-breast exam is something that we advocate in men and women, just knowing your body in general. So if you develop a lump, most of the male breast cancer develops behind the nipple. And so being aware of what's going on with your chest, with your breast.
If you see something different in terms of shape or
shape, contour, skin changes. Nipple inversion, all of these types of cues. And so you should get BRCA testing if you have male breast cancer in your family, if you have ovarian cancer in your family, melanoma, these types of rare cancers would be one reason to get the BRCA testing. And then as far as the surgery technique, yes, if a male presents with a mass and it turns out to be cancer, they get the BRCA1/2 testing. If it's positive, then the same bilateral prophylactic mastectomy, the prophylactic would be on the opposite side, but the mastectomy with the prophylactic mastectomy would be a good option.
Okay, so they would basically have their breasts removed also.
Right.
Okay. Marilyn joins us from Williamsburg. Hi, Marilyn. You're on the air.
Yes, I wanted to know if the new 3D mammogram showed a lobular involvement.
Okay, Dr. Plemmons, can you explain what lobular involvement means?
Well, there are many types of cancer that affect the breast, but the two that are considered epithelial cancers are both ductal and lobular. Most breast cancers are ductal, but the lobular cancer is a particularly tricky type of cancer because it can be difficult to see on the mammogram, even more so than ductal. There have not been studies, and to my knowledge, that have specifically said that three-dimensional mammography has an added advantage to lobular, other than your ability to remove some of that summation of shadows, which limits mammography overall. But its exact sensitivity for lobular carcinoma, I've not seen a study regarding.
Okay. Does that answer your question, Marilyn?
Yes, thank you.
Okay,
it didn't show up on an MRI, and that's why I wondered if the new mammogram would show it, but it doesn't sound like it. It's just mystery.
Okay.
It's a tough cancer, unfortunately.
All right. Thank you so much for the call. We appreciate that. Lucy joins us from Hampton. Hi, Lucy. You're on the air.
Hello.
Hi.
My question is in regard to, I've been told that I have very dense breast tissue. Would it be advantageous to have this 3D mammography over the normal, the 2D mammography?
Okay, Lucy, let's talk to Dr. Plemmons and get his response.
Yeah, I think the short answer is yes. The three-dimensional mammography, this is really what it was targeted to benefit. Interestingly, a study that just came out of Norway that was published earlier this year says that it can benefit even women who don't have dense breast tissue. But certainly the benefit for women with dense breast tissue, I think, is really the focus of this technology.
Is it also, just out of curiosity, is the focus also just in those people that may have had breast cancer before, but you're trying to screen them to make sure no recurrence takes place? Because I would think, just as we've been talking, that would be a prime person for the 3D technology.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I will just elaborate one thing, because the one thing that three-dimensional does in addition, it reduces the callback. Bringing women in after their mammogram and saying, we see something, we need some additional views,
scares you half to death.
And the beautiful thing about three-dimensional mammography is that some of the studies are showing a 35 to 40% reduction in our unnecessary callbacks. It's allowing us to be more definitive in our diagnosis. That will save cost, anxiety, and I think that's a really beneficial tool for that.
Okay. Vicki joins us from Virginia Beach. Hi, Vicki. You're on the air.
Hi, good afternoon. Just calling to ask a question. A friend of mine has just recently been diagnosed with breast cancer, and she's 83. And I was just curious as to how many individuals in that age group, does cancer show up at such a late age? And I can take my answer off the air.
Okay, thanks for the call, Vicki. We appreciate it. Dr. Williams.
We know that one of the main risks of developing breast cancer is age. And so that is a population where you would have an increased incidence of breast cancer in older patients.
I want to ask you a question, Dr. Williams, because cancer runs in my family, and I've heard some of the older people say, if I'm diagnosed with breast cancer, do not cut me, because once you do surgery, it spreads. I mean, that's
an excellent question, and I've definitely heard that before as well. And that's one of the myths about breast cancer or cancer in general.
Period, right.
That we have definitely in the African American community, and I think in other communities as well. And I think that may come from the fact that long ago, before the screening programs, most of the cancers were caught at a later stage. And so you'd have surgery, someone would say, we got it all, but we really didn't have a great understanding of metastasis and how to look for metastasis. And so now that we have these things, one of the first things we get,
meaning cells left over.
Metastasis would be when the cells from the primary cancer, whether it be in the breast or prostate, have left that organ and gone into the lymph nodes, gone into the liver, lung, bone, and breast. That's where they like to go. And so we didn't know that. And so then you think you've gotten the primary tumor because you removed the mass. But then later on, you develop problems in these other areas. And I think that may be where it came from.
I think a lot of times, too, when people go through surgery, though, and you say to them, we got it all. and then a year later or 6 months later or whatever, something else shows up. Talk to me about that process in terms of how do you know you've gotten it all?
We don't, and I don't use that terminology, but unfortunately in the past it obviously has been used, or that was the understanding of the people that were being given the information, that it was all gotten. And so I purposely stay away from that. But the way that we try to avoid that now is when a woman comes to me diagnosed with a lesion or mammography that needs a biopsy, we get a biopsy, whether it be a needle localized biopsy, ultrasound guided biopsy, excisional biopsy. It gives us a tissue sample. We get the tissue. If it comes back as invasive cancer, then we do a staging workup. The next step is the staging workup. That's where we get the CT of the chest, abdomen, pelvis, bone scan, and we also get. So
you're really looking for everything that you can find in terms of the body, so that you know which direction to go for treatment.
And we also look at the other breast and that breast with MRI, because we want to know if there is anything in the opposite breast, because then that will help us to create a better treatment strategy.
Can the cancer travel back and forth between breasts?
Well,
I'm just curious.
Not so much back and forth, but it can travel
from one to the other.
Yes.
Okay.
I think one of the other things that bring up when we talk about staging that I think people just have to always keep in mind is like when they do bone scans and you're looking to see what they can visually see at that time. And a lot of times, what I found in medicine is everything is about communication. He brought up a very excellent point about what he chooses to say and what he chooses not to say. But even like with a bone scan, you may get a bone scan 1 month, it may look fine. You do it look at 3 months later, there may be something that it wasn't there before. It's not to say everybody should be getting bone scans every month, but the technology we have is as good as the technology we have. So you have to be careful with some of those interpretations. That's why they're always so diligent about telling patients, listen, I need to see you back at X time. That's why they're getting all these follow-up scans, because they're trying to make sure that things that weren't there before, don't show up later on.
So it's not to get you to pay that copay again.
Yeah, exactly.
It's really because they need to.
As much as they think that's the case, but you really get into when you talk about with patients. I mean, a lot of it is what you can see based on the technology you have in front of you. So if it's not 100%, and there's nothing in life that's 100%. That follow through is where you see. That's why, like, if you see a nodule on a pulmonary scan, they'll say, "I want to see it again in 6 months." I mean, it's because did it grow? Did it change? That impacts on how you handle things in the future.
And hold that thought for just a second. I want to throw out the phone numbers again: 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. We're talking about breast cancer treatment and prevention with Dr. Keith Newby, our resident doctor here at Another View, and Dr. Charles Williams and Dr. John Plemmons. 440-2665 or 1-800-940-2240. How important, this just in general, is it for people, women in particular, since we're talking about breast cancer, to bring someone with them as they start the process once they've been diagnosed, in terms of talking to doctors, talking to surgeons, talking to all the different people that are necessary, the team that will come together to help them overcome? How important is it to have another person there? Because I would imagine the emotions and the fear that you're going through because someone just told you you have breast cancer is probably pretty overwhelming. Do you try to parcel out the information in stages? Or Dr. Williams?
You hit the nail on the head. It's very important, and I almost like it to when I see a patient post-operatively, they're still under the effects of anesthesia, and most of the time I don't bother trying to give them any type of instructions. I give it to the person that accompanied them because they're not going to remember it. It's not exactly the same, but when you get information such as you've just been diagnosed with breast cancer, a lot of what comes after that goes out of the window. Right. You start to visualize every person you've ever known who's had breast cancer, every myth that you've heard about breast cancer, every fact that you know about breast cancer, your life, your children, and so people fade away. And then we're giving them a lot of information. And then, so I think it's extremely important, and we always encourage patients to bring their family members back with them when they come.
When they come to talk. Dr. Plemmons, how do you even get started? Okay, let's start from the beginning. I find out I've been diagnosed with breast cancer. What's the first step? How do you find a doctor? How do you decide? Do you go to one of the cancer centers that you see advertised all the time?
Right.
Do you go to the hospital? What do you do?
Well, the first step, of course, is and I just step back just a little bit before where you're beginning and say, get your mammogram. And I would tell women when they get that letter that says, we see something, come on back, only 10% of those women are actually going to have anything. 90% of women, they get let go. So you get that letter, you naturally assume the worst. You come in, you're told you need a biopsy, you assume the worst, when most of those biopsies are going to be benign. But once you get that diagnosis, the team just kind of rallies around you. Sentara and I know Bon Secours have nurse navigators that we're going to sit down with that patient, that are going to help you get to the breast surgeon, help you partner with the radiation oncologist. Your primary care doctor will be part of that team to help guide you. A lot of women know exactly what they want when they come in. My sister saw this breast surgeon, I need to get to them. But other women are, quite frankly, confused and they're scared, and the system should just rally right around them and support them through this process.
So we have this wonderful thing in this area called the Proton Therapy Center. I never see proton therapy discussed around the topic of breast cancer. Is it not effective as a treatment? I'm just curious. Nobody knows.
I'm not very familiar with that, and especially its use in breast cancer. To the best of my knowledge, we're not using proton therapy in breast cancer.
Okay, so it's only for certain other cancers. Okay, all right. That's a good question. So after you start going through your the changes in terms of making decisions about doctors and so forth, what's the biggest question, Dr. Williams, that you wish patients would ask you that they don't?
This is once they've been diagnosed.
Once they've been diagnosed, and so they're coming to you to say, Dr. Williams, you're a breast surgeon. I know I need this surgery.
Right.
What's the biggest question you wish they would ask you?
Well, I guess there would be a couple of things.
Okay.
One, breast conserving therapy. I wish that more women who were eligible for breast conserving therapy, which just means that you have a tumor, and with the size of that tumor and the size of your breast, you are a person who could only have that lump removed and have radiation at the site where the lump was, and then whether or not you have lymph nodes positive, then go on to have chemotherapy or your hormonal therapy. And I wish that more women who are eligible for that therapy would ask about that and choose that as an option rather than assuming that it's going to be better for them if they have a mastectomy, because we know that overall survival from a lumpectomy with the radiation therapy is the same as with a mastectomy.
So the goal is to try to do the least invasive but yet the most effective.
Yes, that's correct.
In terms of treatment. Okay, Tanya joins us from Virginia Beach. Hi, Tanya. You're in the air. Hi, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm a 48-year-old white woman with very little history of breast cancer in my family, and I've never had a mammogram. I don't have insurance. I kind of live on a shoestring budget. Everything I earn is what I need to live on. So I've never gone and had a mammogram, kind of thinking that if they did find something, I wouldn't be able to be treated anyway. So I'm wondering what options there are out there.
Actually, Tanya, you know what? Our doctors are shaking their head. No.
Absolutely.
Don't do that. So, Dr. Plemmons.
Yeah, I'm really glad you called. And quite frankly, we see women in your situation who come into the breast center late stage. They may have even come into an ER on a Friday night because a big mass had finally started to ulcerate or something, and it just tears you to pieces. I don't have all the numbers out here, but I can give you the number for Sentara, 1-800-Sentara. If you call that number, we will get you to the breast center and get you access to some of the programs. Every Woman's Life can reach out to you. EVMS runs through their residency, the breast evaluation program, where we provide surgery. You can get the care you need. So just raise your hand and get into the system so we can help you.
Okay, Tanya?
Thank you.
Okay, thank you for the call. We appreciate that. Let's see, Lisa, do we have another call? Okay, let's go to Janine in Newport News. Hi, Janine, you're on the air.
Thank you. I was diagnosed at stage 0 for precancerous, so I had a needle aspiration done in the left breast. And my question is, what's the possibility of the same thing happening in the right breast?
Okay, Janine, let's see what, Dr. Williams?
Okay. I'm not sure that I'm clear on what happened with you, but it sounds like you're saying you had a benign or non-cancerous cyst in your breast and it was treated with aspiration.
Aspiration, yes.
Okay. And the cyst has not recurred? It's gone now?
No, it's been over 10 years now.
Okay. Well, without seeing you and seeing your mammograms or ultrasounds, I would say that cyst definitely could recur, but if it was filled with non-cancerous cystic fluid, it would just be a matter of either doing another aspiration in the future at that site or removing it. And as far as the opposite breast, you definitely could have another cyst, benign cyst form, and it would be the same management scheme.
Okay, thank you so much, Janine, for your call. Much. We appreciate that. Christy joins us from Yorktown. Hi, Christy.
Well, hi. I'm really glad to be able to get on the air. This is a topic that's near and dear to me. I am a bilateral breast cancer survivor, and I come from a long line on both sides of my family, and my dad and I share the BRCA mutation. You all were I didn't get to hear you from the very beginning, but you were asking about prophylactic mastectomies. And I volunteer with Beyond Boobs, and it's a support system that goes from Petersburg down to South Carolina now. And I see an awful lot of young women who were not listened to. They still in this day and age, doctors are, not you guys obviously, but they're being told you're too young for breast cancer, or breast cancer doesn't hurt, or you just have mastitis because you're nursing. And so they don't listen to that inner voice that's telling them something is wrong. And I know that several of them would have had prophylactic mastectomies if they had known, because they are in the fight of their lives, because by the time they've been diagnosed, they're stage 3 or 4. And they've got young children. And I think for a lot of women, it is definitely worth just cutting off something that doesn't make you a woman. It doesn't make you who you are, their body parts. And you can certainly get along without them. And reconstruction, if you choose that route, can do a really wonderful job. The other thing I wanted to say, if you wouldn't mind, is if anyone out there really wants pointers on what to do for themselves, for their own breast health, or if someone they know is diagnosed, the calendar that we have, a calendar to live by, is really a breast health manual disguised as a calendar, and it is full of life-saving information.
Okay, Christy, where can people get the Beyond Boobs calendars, and online?
They can go to beyondboobs.org, and that will list all of our support systems.
Okay.
And if, a lot of people think, support group, yuck, it's going to be a lot of tears. Well, I'll tell you, most of the tears are because people are laughing so hard. We are moving beyond the disease that started in our breast, and we support one another. We share information, pointers on what's helped us as we've gone through therapy or surgery, and lots of laughter, because that heals.
Okay. And Christy, we really appreciate it. We're going to have to run now, but thank you so much for the call. We appreciate that.
All right.
Dr. Williams.
Bye-bye.
I just want to say something. When I was just kind of doing some prep for the show, I have 3 daughters. So they're very young now, 7, 10, and 12. But in thinking about the triple-negative breast cancer, how it's more prevalent in African-American women, and how cancer can be more difficult to diagnose at early stages in young women, she made an excellent point that women have to be their best advocates in going to the doctor, being persistent, saying, this is not right. And if one doctor is telling you, you're too young or whatever, then obviously they're uninformed, and you need to try to find a different caregiver to help you there. And then the other point I think she made that was very good is that if you are fortunate enough to be diagnosed at an early stage as a young woman with breast cancer, sometimes that tough decision of having a prophylactic contralateral mastectomy along with removing the diseased breast.
Okay, there you go with that doctor speak again. What does that mean?
I never do that. Okay. So the cancer, this young lady said she was a bilateral cancer survivor. That means she had cancer in each breast.
Okay.
So she wouldn't have had a prophylactic mastectomy on the other side. Prophylactic means that you're taking off, as with Angelina Jolie, no cancer has been found yet. She just did that because of the gene. So in the case of prophylactic mastectomy, if you have a cancer, say in the right breast, and you decide I'm going to have a mastectomy on the right, then you say, okay, well, I'm going to also have one on the left, because we know that there's a 40 to 50% chance of having a cancer recurrence in the other breast if you keep it. And then also with ovarian cancer as well, there's a 40-50% chance of developing ovarian cancer. And I think Angelina Jolie also said that she was going to eventually have a bilateral salpingo-oophorectomy, which we're not saying that every woman should, especially if you're not beyond your reproductive years, but I think it certainly makes good sense to keep you alive and healthy as long as you can be versus not
doing it. We got the number for Bon Secours also if you don't have insurance or if you need help paying for your mammogram. 889-CARE, C-A-R-E, 889-2273. Let's see. Mark joins us from Suffolk. Mark, we've only got about 3 minutes left, so can we make it quick?
Had gone in and had a mammogram done, and they said, you need to come back, and they did an extraction with the needle, and we said, okay, go do that. But then a month later, when you get the bill, it's a $7,000 bill, and it's like nobody tells you that type of thing. Does that even sound reasonable?
Okay, let's see what the doctors have to say. I don't know if you guys are involved in the billing.
I did not hear the first part of that question, but it sounded like someone had a screening mammogram, then needed a biopsy. They had the biopsy, and the bill was very high. Is that the
that's it?
And you have insurance, or you do not have insurance?
Yes, we do have insurance.
Okay. Yeah,
was that actually what you had to pay? That was your was that just what the bill said, but the insurance took care of X amount? What was?
Right. So I got about $1,300 bill to pay. I'm just saying, does that sound right? You go in the office for 15 minutes and you get a bill like that?
Well, just always understand what all that stuff entails, because it's not just now. Of course, we in this room have nothing to do with. That's a hospital charge, typically speaking, for that kind of thing. So but realizing the nursing staff that has to be there, the supplies, because even just to do a simple biopsy, you'd be surprised at what the supplies cost to do that. It has to be done sterilely, so all the gloves, all the cleaning solutions, and all that stuff. I mean, and trust me, I'm not defending the hospital's bill because I'm never involved in that personally. But I do know just when you talk about costs, it's all relative to what it takes to actually get that job done. And that's not always in the hospital's control, because a lot of times of course, I'm sure they have their little markup, but a lot of it is based on what the cost of the actual equipment to do that biopsy is. It's a lot more than what you would think.
Okay, Mark, thanks so much for that call. We appreciate it. What would you say to men about being supportive of their significant others or their mothers or sisters or whomever may be going through breast cancer, either treatment or diagnosis, or somehow are caught up with an issue? And we've got about 2 minutes left, so I'm going to let you start, Dr. Plemmons.
Understand that every woman is going to take this process. Every woman's going to take this process a little different. You need to be close to her when you sense that she needs it. Give her some space when she needs to be with her family or her other female friends, or go to these support groups. Support the family. Take care of the kids or the home when she step up during that period of time, because she's going to have a lot of stuff going on. So make it easier for her to focus on her own health.
Okay. Dr. John Plemmons, who is with Sentara, medical director for the Sentara Norfolk Breast Center and a mammographer. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Okay. What would you say to men?
Well, I don't think anything needs to be said after that. Step up. I think was the gist of that. When your wife needs your support or your mother needs your support, be there when she needs her space. Give her space, and I guess mainly just be listener. A lot of times as men, we want to be problem solvers and we want to direct things, and in that situation we really are there as a support.
Okay.
And so we need to learn how to do that.
Thank you so much, Dr. Charles Williams with Bon Secours. Thank you. And Keith, last word. You got 10 seconds.
Okay, well, I would agree. we do actually in our office, Fort Norfolk, we do mammography there mostly because of the potential screening. You got to get women that want to come there. We always catch them when they're there because they try to make excuses why they don't want to go. We say, we have it here. You can get it done right while you're here. So.
Okay. And Dr. Keith Newby, thank you so much for joining us, and we will be right back.
Hi, I'm LaShawn Merritt, and if you want to discuss the issues and celebrate the successes of the African American community, listen to Another View on 89.5.
Actor, director, and Norfolk State University graduate Tim Reed is a man who needs no introduction. So I'll introduce his latest project instead. Tim is the founder of the Legacy Media Institute, dedicated to bringing together leading professionals in the film and television industry, outstanding actors, and young men and women who want a career in entertainment media. The Institute is hosting its first annual International Film Festival, and the man himself is here to tell us all about it. Tim Reed, welcome to Another View. Tim?
Welcome. Thank you.
You know, we know that you are sitting in an airport, so we really appreciate your taking some time. I know if they start to board, we'll let you go, I promise. But tell us.
I think I'll be all right.
When is the film festival, and tell us what it's all about.
The festival is November 8th, 9th, and 10th throughout the city, as well as on campus at Norfolk State, as well as the neighborhood theater. We have events and films from all over the world. It's going to be an exciting weekend. We have a gala on Friday at the Half Moon at Nauticus. We're doing a pre-screening on the 6th of one of the films just to get the people excited about what's coming on the weekend. So there's a lot going on, and we've been planning it now for a year, and here we are.
Wow, that is very exciting. Well, one of the films, you're doing international films as well as films from here in the United States, and one of them is Dr. Kwame Nkrumah. I want to play a clip, and then let's talk about it on the other side.
Okay.
At long last, the battle has ended.
He dared to challenge colonial subjects and the colonial powers so that ordinary African people could organize for their independence.
And Nkrumah, in his years in the United States and in Britain, was under surveillance. Well, he was a black man talking about the need for racial equality and against imperialism.
Our independence is meaningless unless it lifts up the total effect of the African continent.
Kwame Nkrumah was the greatest Pan-Africanist and socialist revolutionary organizer that the African world has seen. And if the masses of the people pick up on his ideas, Africa will be free.
So, Tim, tell me about the directors and producers of films like this film in particular. What are you trying to showcase with the in the festival?
Well, one of the things is the importance and the interconnectionness of culture. He was a man who led Africa, was into its early independent movement, and he was trained and experienced what we were going through here during the early civil rights era by coming to school here. So he got a lot about what was happening in the black community here and took back to Africa. So the interconnectedness of culture is what the festival is really all about. And the film itself was produced and directed. It was produced in England. But it was directed and shot by a young man who was one of my first members of the Legacy Media Institute, Nuakai. Nuakai came over. I brought him over for 4 weeks from London. He's an outstanding young filmmaker. He travels the world to Ethiopia, rainforests, and he's always shooting. And he's a young, passionate filmmaker, and I was so impressed with him. So I asked him to send me some of his work, and he sent this over.
Wow.
So it's a representation of the kind of people who are part of the Legacy Media Institute, but it's also a representation of the interconnectedness of culture. We're so myopic and singular in our thoughts here in America when it comes to race or culture, but the world is a fascinating place with the interconnectedness of culture, and we all really are related in a way, regardless of our race.
Absolutely. One of the other films is Once Upon a Time When We Were Colored. Let's listen to that clip.
In the small towns of the American South, in the years before the big cities began to beckon, roots ran deep. People held tight.
Well, look here.
Friendships were forever.
I get a pleasure bringing ice to you on any day.
And for one family, it was a time that would test their courage.
Hey, what are you looking at?
And change their lives forever.
I'd rather die than spend one more day in that field.
From the highly acclaimed classic novel comes an intimate and epic story of struggle.
Look at that dog. You see those words?
I can read, Papa.
Strength.
Don't let nobody beat you down.
And destiny.
Don't you ever be sorry for what you truly believe.
Al Freeman Jr.
We helped build this country, and a lot of black folk died doing it. And every time we get a little something, they try to take it away from us.
Felicia Rashad.
Well, what you gonna do? Oh, you just keep your eyes on that mirror. You can see what I'm gonna do.
Leon.
You've been here 10 minutes, you're in trouble already.
Sally Richardson.
Melvin, what you come back here for?
Mostly I came back here to remind myself why I left.
Polly Bergen.
Public libraries just bursting with good books. Color's not allowed in the library, Miss Mabel.
And Richard Roundtree.
You can be anything you wants to be. Learn how to draw buildings or be a doctor.
In the unforgettable saga of an American family. Once upon a time when we were colored.
Wow. I mean, what a lineup in that movie.
Yeah, that was my first film as a director, producer, and it was a pleasure that I think about constantly ever since I made it. And the voice you heard of the trailer was James Avery, a friend of mine, who's of course on Fresh Prince of Bel-Air. But I'm reprising that movie to show that hasn't been shown for quite a while, and I thought that because this community means so much to me that on Sunday at the Attucks, we're going to have a brunch and a movie. Right after church, come over, get some chicken wings and some waffles. We sit down and have a brunch, and then we go in and see the movie. And then I brought in the gentleman who wrote the book, who the movie is based on, Clifton Salter, his life. He's going to come, and we're going to have a discussion about community and about what this community meant to me and what it can mean to many kids in the future. A lot of these young people have forgotten this part of our culture. Church Street has pretty much been destroyed. Urban removal came in and not only took the buildings, but it took the culture. And so I think films like this help people to remember when times were bad, but people were good. And I think we can have some of that again in the future.
Absolutely. So do you get goosebumps when you listen to that trailer knowing that you were the one who directed it and put it together?
Well, it was so much a part of my life. When I first read the book that movie was based on, I had moved back to Virginia, living in Charlottesville on my farm, and I had retired. And I read the excerpts, and I said, I've got to go back into business, and I've got to make this movie. I didn't even know the guy. And I chased him down, and I told him, I said, that's my story. I grew up in North Virginia and Whaleyville and outside Suffolk. I said, I know these people, and your story is my story, as it is with so many people my age who grew up from the old school ways. And I said, I've got to make this movie. So it took me a year to convince him, but he finally gave in, and I made the movie.
Now, you want to also encourage young filmmakers to come and check out the festival. What can they learn from the Legacy Institute?
Well, I think more so they learned the power of story, because I think the young people have forgotten. They know all the technique, and they could shoot things with an iPhone that I couldn't shoot with a Panavision. But what is being missed is storytelling. And I think young people need to understand the power of images more than just throwing stuff out there on iPhones and YouTube and Facebook and Instagram. These are powerful images, and they affect the minds and the soul and the spirit of people around the world. It's not just Norfolk anymore. It's not just Virginia. It's not just America. These images go all over the world. I travel a great deal. And whether I'm in Africa or Brazil or Cuba, we have films from Cuba. We have films from the Caribbean. We have animation. We have films from Suriname. We have films from Africa, from Europe. People are coming in from Europe. They're coming in from Trinidad. So it's going to be truly an international film festival.
Wow, that is fantastic. So it starts on Friday, November the 8th through Sunday, November the 10th. But people can tune into WHRO TV 15 on November 5th for Behind the Lens, which is on at 11 p.m. And is that going to give us a little preview?
Well, it's going to talk about one of the filmmakers who was part of the Institute, made his first film. And we're going to talk about that. And again, but they can go to our webpage, which is LMI-IFF.org, O-R-G.
Okay, LMI-IFF.org, and there you can find out all of the information that you need to know about the film festival itself. Tim, we really wish you the very best and enjoy. We'll be looking forward to seeing you that weekend, November the 8th through November the 10th, and there will be movies shown at the Attics, at Norfolk State, at Nauticus, and at various venues around the city. So we wish you the very best and have a safe trip, and we'll see you that weekend, okay?
Great time, and I'm actually walking onto the plane.
Fantastic timing, absolutely. Take care, Tim. We'll talk to you later. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you very much.
All righty, bye-bye now. All right, that was Tim Reed, actor Tim Reed, coming back home to Norfolk to bring the International Legacy Media Institute 2013 International Film Festival. Go to F as in Frank, F.org to find out all the information that you need, find out ticket sales. And I know several of the events are also free. So hopefully you'll be able to join in, and we appreciate that. And that's our program for this Friday. If you'd like to hear it again or share it with a friend, please visit anotherviewradio.org and download our podcast. You can also sign up for our eView newsletter, which is a once-a-week reminder of upcoming shows. And remember, you can watch us do radio live on your computer when you stream the show at noon every Friday at anotherviewradio.org. Next week, a serious conversation about an issue that disproportionately affects the Black community, but is of consequence to all communities: the reentry of convicted felons back into society after serving their time. You don't want to miss this critical topic. Our theme music was composed and performed by Jay Sennett. Our show producer is Lisa Godley. Victor Boeing is our audio engineer, and Eric Moore answered our phones. I'm Barbara Ham-Lee. Have a fabulous weekend, and let's get together again next Friday at noon for Another View.